Good morning, sir. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Good morning.
Thank you for your time here, sir.
You're welcome.
Sir, can you please start from your childhood, where you was born and your study, your parents, and your upbringing, please?
Oh, okay. So I was born in Adelaide,
Okay.
South Australia, and my parents brought me over to Victoria, Geelong,
Yep.
in 1956, so when I was 6 years old.
Okay.
And so I went to school in Geelong, primary school, secondary school, and I started work at the age of 15.
Okay.
The school I went to only went to year 11, and I started working for the PMG, which was a government department that looked after telecommunications
Okay.
and Australia Post.
Okay.
So postal services and telecommunication services. And my first objective was to, with my first paycheck, was to buy a set of drums.
Yes. I know that.
Because I love playing the drums.
Yes.
I was in a band for a fair while. And then after a few years working, some elderly work colleagues said to me, "You silly young fellow, you need to go back to school." So I did.
Yep.
And got my higher certificate, as it was called then. It's now called the VC in Victoria.
Yeah.
And went back to uni.
Okay.
And went to Deakin University and did a commerce degree.
Yep. So, do you still remember moving when you were 6 from Adelaide to Geelong?
Very vaguely. I
Yes.
can remember my mother driving the car and my father driving a truck that was loaded up with all the furniture
Yes.
and equipment, and a dog and a cat coming with us. That's about all I can remember.
Okay. And who was driving the truck? Do you remember?
My father was driving the truck
Okay.
and my mother was driving the car.
Okay. And you had any siblings with you?
No, I'm an only child.
Okay. Okay. So coming back to the education, you are in economics.
Yeah,
Mainly
finance.
yes, economics, but physics, chemistry, maths, any subject, we have a bond with them. We need to create a bonding with them to understand it. It's like being with a partner that you try to understand it, you get frustrated and lot of things like that. How did you come into finance and economics? Was it planned?
Yeah, interesting question.
Yeah.
I mean, when I was at secondary school, mathematics wasn't my favourite subject. But interestingly, when I went to university, I became more interested in it. So it was more, because I was able to relate it to business, and it became more of a outcomes education process. So I started to understand it better because it led to outcomes.
Yeah.
And it also is very dependent on how good your teacher is as well.
Yes.
And if the teacher can make it interesting
Yes.
and outcomes oriented,
Yes.
you know what? You learn a lot quicker
Yes.
and you learn a lot better.
Yes.
That's what I found personally.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Mm.
Yep. So, sir, you told about your corporate finance lecturer, Mr. Hugh Murray.
Yeah.
You said that there was something he taught you which make you feel how to do things more practically rather than in theoretical.
Yeah.
You even said that all the things you did in the future, there was that concept there, and you always used that concept in that. Can you please tell us what did he teach you?
Well, yeah. I mean, he was one of the people, one
Yes.
of the lecturers who
Yes.
actually gave the practical examples.
Yes.
For example, in finance, you get taught the capital asset model, and
Yes.
it's a nice model, and it's used around the world to calculate the average cost of capital, weighted average cost of capital, and so on. But understanding that the cash flows in the business and the profit and loss in the business is just as equally as important.
Yes, yes.
And how forecasts are done and so on. I mean, he taught the practical side. So that was very interesting. And getting back to the mathematics question, the lecturer in quantitative analysis, which is statistics and maths really,
Yes.
Probability,
Calculus and
probabilities and so on.
Yes.
He also made it practical because, and I've never forgotten this, he taught us by probabilities, probability theory, the probability of winning tax lotto.
Okay.
And so that was a sort of practical outcome, and it's probably why I've never ever bought a tax lotto.
Okay. So it's number of favorable cases upon total number of cases.
Well, I think the calculation was you had a 66 million in one chance.
Yes, 16 million one chance. That's right. Talking about loss and profit, you spend your first paycheck on buying the drum. I know that. What's the calculation there? How much was the paycheck, which year, and how much you spent on the drum?
Well, we got paid fortnightly, and the paycheck was something like $54 for the fortnight. This is back in 1967, right?
Okay.
And I couldn't buy a whole drum kit, so I had to put a payment down.
Yes.
I forget how much the payment was, but it took me a little while to pay it.
And you still got it?
I still got my drums.
Yeah,
I still
have them.
It's not the same drum kit. I still have the set of drums.
Okay. So there is a thing which I have, which is a fact, that when a cartoonist reads a newspaper and when a normal person reads a newspaper, the cartoonist can pick up the panic and tension between the lines. Same with the lawyer. The lawyer can understand what the government is trying to do, what the policies are, because they have a better vision on that. Being an economist, what do you think? What's superpower they have to understand what's going on in the educational field?
Look, I think, I always differentiate economics from finance. I mean, economics, you're trying to understand both macroeconomic or microeconomic conditions, and you're trying to predict impacts of inflation, interest rates, and so on. Yes, you've got to understand that for the impact on your business going forward. Finance is more about financial planning, budgeting the business, forecasting, again, revenues and costs and so on. And to your question, over time you learn all the theory at university, but over time you get to understand what to look for. Hockey sticks in predictions, those sorts of things, testing assumptions, because you do learn along the way. And always my point of view is if you don't learn something every day, it hasn't been a great day. Constant learning. And I'm still learning.
Yes, and that's the thing about education. It keeps on going, it never finishes. Are you reading any book at the moment?
No, I'm not reading a book. Well, that's not quite true. I am reading one book, but slowly.
Okay.
It's actually called Sand Talks.
Sand Talks.
Yeah, it's about indigenous way of life, so indigenous people, and we've got a lot to learn from them. And why they think the way they do. For example, if you have a meeting with indigenous people, there's no agenda because they call it a yarn. And it's a very good principle, because if there's no agenda, nobody's driving the topic, right? And the concept of a yarn is that everybody gets to speak. And when speaking stops, the yarn's over, and you may not have resolved or decided anything, but you come back for another yarn. So it's all about the discussion rather than, it's a very different way of operating. And so I'm reading that.
Okay, so I just want to go back, and I want to know, when you was around 20 years old, What was happening around your life at that time?
You asked me something that's hard to remember. It's a long time ago. when I was 20 years old, I'd been working for 5 years, or 4 really. I turned 16 2 weeks after.
And you
I
got the
started.
job, yeah.
So, I was enjoying my youth.
Yes.
When I turned 20 years old was when in Australia there was national service.
Okay.
So you got called up and they had a ballot system. If your birthday came out of the ballot, you went into national service. And I remember that well because I was a surfer.
Yeah.
And a whole group of us were down the beach and we were listening to the ballot.
Yes.
Some of us got called up to national service, some of us didn't. I didn't. So I remember that quite distinctly at the age of 20.
Yes.
And so some went off to serve in the army and the rest of us kept doing what we were doing. So 20 was a particularly memorable time, mainly because of that event.
Yes. And was there a big difference when you was 30 and 20? Because that's a time zone where a lot of changes happens.
Well, when I was 30, I had gone back to university.
Okay.
I got my degree, my career path was changing, and I also got married at 27.
Okay.
So life changes in the 20 to 30.
Yes. And did you felt like when you was 29, it's okay, once you hit the 30, that digit, you feel like, oh, it's a responsibility and...
Well, I mean, obviously being married and children coming along, there's a maturity that you've got to step up to.
Yes.
But also with the qualification, progress career-wise was changing. I had an attitude at work that to learn as much as I could, back to the learning all the time concept. And I moved around, so Telstra was a large organisation, so I moved around trying to get as much knowledge and experience as I could, which I tell young people to do today, because learning as much as you can puts you personally in a position to market yourself with your knowledge and your skill base. And so that helped me to progress until finally I became the CFO of Telstra.
Doing all these things, you need to be really mentally strong, because I have seen you are chairman of Port of Melbourne, you are Chancellor of Deakin University, you are chairman of Melbourne International Jazz Festival, you are chairman of Bionics Institute and Australia Post, executive Telstra Finance. How do you keep yourself mentally strong, and what's your plan to keep going? Because this is not easy.
Again, a good question. I think you've got to make sure that you have things outside of work that you enjoy, like music.
Yeah.
And I enjoy
Football.
Australian rules football.
Yes.
So you need to have things that take your mind off what you're doing. It is true that, like a role like Chief Financial Officer, it's a 24/7 role in that you're thinking about it all the time. So you do have to have a certain level of resilience. But I always found, and I've always believed this philosophy too, and I've actually funded a scholarship to prove that this is true with a PhD student. Having fun at work is important as well. So because if you are so intense and if you're so serious and there is nothing else, then you can do some mental damage to yourself. So I always, and the people that that worked for me over the years used to tell me they enjoyed working for me because we had fun at work as well.
Okay.
And you know, you think about it, you spend, you know, most of your conscious life at work, and that's a long time.
Yes.
So you know what? You have to enjoy it.
Yes.
And you have to have some fun.
Yes.
Because if you're not enjoying it and you're not having fun, it's going to be a difficult road.
It's going to be difficult.
So that's solely to be direct in my answer. Have fun.
Yes.
And have other things that you can think about.
Okay. Do you think the age of 25 to 35 having fun nowadays at work, or do you think they are a bit overstressed?
Look, I think it's still possible. It depends on the leader.
Yeah.
One of the things you didn't mention I'm doing is I am a coach.
Okay.
So I work for a company called Foresight Global Coaching. So I coach people now.
Okay.
So C-level executives to be CEOs, coach CEOs, and part of my coaching is to make them better leaders.
Yes.
And you know, as I talked about, encourage them to have fun
Yes.
with their people.
Yes.
And you know, to be a really good leader, you've got to have followers.
Yes. Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And people have to want to follow you. So why would I want to follow you? You have to give them a reason to, and that is, you know where you're going, right? That's a good start.
Yes. Yes.
And so you have a good strategy, and they understand it, and
Yes.
so yeah, I'm with you. But they're also having fun on the journey,
Yes.
right? And they're enjoying it.
Yes.
And then, so those qualities make a good leader.
Okay. Do you, what's your way of managing everything?
You mean my own personal life or managing at work?
Like not mixing it up?
Look, I think you've got to put life in perspective.
Yeah.
I think I've always had the philosophy, you know, so for everybody something goes wrong somewhere.
Yes.
I mean, we all make
Yes.
some missteps along the
Yes.
way, and whenever that's happened to me, and some are big and some are small, you know, the way I look at it is, you know, there's always tomorrow,
Yes.
and you know, it hasn't really hurt me too much.
Yes.
And so there's always tomorrow, and there's always a new start. And
Yes.
you know, if you look back too much, and if you look at mistakes too much, you know, it'll get on top of you. So looking forward, you know, you can always learn from mistakes and do it better.
Yes. Yes.
Always can.
Yes. So like you mentioned, ups and downs, everybody face hardships as well. Everybody does that. What's the hard things you have seen in your life, but you still kept going?
Well, you know, I was brought up with parents that didn't have much.
Okay.
And so I've seen, I would say that was hardships. They both worked very hard to educate me,
Yes.
and you know, persistence, resilience, and being thankful for the things you have and attain.
Yes.
And my mother always used to say to me, as I progressed in life and succeeded,
Yes.
John, stay humble.
Okay.
And she always taught me humility. And it's another trait of a good leader.
Yes.
If a good leader, you'll find the best leaders have humility.
Yes.
And so, you know, I always think back to, you know, my good learnings from my mother and father.
Yes.
And I think through hardships, if you think about those things, I mean, you know, I know that, well, yes, I've worked hard, but I'm very fortunate.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
and lucky to achieve what I've achieved. Yes, I've done things to help that, but you know, there is a bit of luck in life.
Yes. Although you got too much going on, but whenever you have a chance to sit, when you have free time, what do you think about yourself?
About myself.
What time you go and
Yeah, look, I don't think about myself all that much. You know, because you can't change yourself from the past.
Yes.
As I've got older, and of course the age I'm at now, I think about enjoying life and reaping some of the rewards of life. My wife and I travel, enjoy travelling together, and you know, we're spending a bit more time doing that. We seem to be able to fit it in.
Yes.
She's just retired, so you know. So enjoying those sorts of things is important to me now.
Yes.
But as you you sort of look back on life and you work hard. Well, when you're younger, you play hard.
Yes.
Then you start to get a sense of responsibility, work hard, and then there is a phase in life where you should enjoy, reap your rewards.
Yes. So I think when you was a kid, maybe 6, 7. There wasn't any iPad at that time, so you was actually going outside and playing with other kids and mingle. What do you think of kids and iPad?
Yeah, like it's something that we have to live with.
Yes.
I think there's some disciplines that parents need to adopt. I mean, I know my own grandchildren, their parents, you know, there is no iPad time.
Yes.
So. And they are encouraged to be engaged in sport, which they are. So I think the balance is right. I mean, we can't. iPads are here, right?
Yes.
And they're here to stay.
Yes.
And the tech world is
taking over,
progressing quickly.
Yes.
So we just need to make sure kids have balance in life, and exercising the body also exercises the mind.
Yes, true. So you are associated with Deakin University, but I would like to ask you, do you remember the first time you went to the university? Do you remember first day?
I do, yeah. I was in 1977.
Yes.
And Deakin University was only a 2 years old university.
Yes.
And I remember orientation day, as most students do.
Okay.
And that was good fun. There was 2 bands playing, In Excess and Midnight Oil. So I remember that. I'm a musician, so I remember those important things. And I remember the first lectures, there was at least 100 people in the lecture theatre, at least, and it was a good experience.
It was, what was going on in your mind in the first lecture, because it must be something new and different?
Well, I mean, the first thing that goes through your mind is, am I going to be able to do this?
Yeah.
And because tertiary universities are much different from secondary.
Yes.
It's more hand-holding in a secondary school environment. So in a university, you get out of it what you put in. So you have to put in the work. And if you don't, you don't get the outcomes.
Yes.
Secondary school, it's a bit more hand-holding.
Yes. So students can't stand without teachers. They are our everything. They show us path. What role does teachers play in your life? And do you remember your favorite teacher that?
Well, I alluded to this right at the start of this discussion that a good teacher is so important. And what I mean a good teacher, I mean one who really gets across the learnings. I gave the example of outcomes, Hugh Moore and so on, right? So people who teach and give practical examples of what you're learning, I find anyway, I think most people do, you learn more. rather than here's my script, I'll get up in front of the class, I'll give it, and good luck with that. You know, I mean,
Yes.
that's the difference.
Yes.
You know? And most teachers and most good teachers care about the students and they want them to succeed. And those that do that are the better teachers.
Okay. What's the right way of making decisions and not get too confused?
Well, I mean, the right way of making decisions is have the best information you can get. You don't always have perfect information, and so there will be an element of judgment.
Okay.
And so you do have to rely on your own, what you know, your knowledge that has been built up over time. But when you're a younger leader, you don't have so much of that. So the information that you get is important. Testing what you're thinking with other people is also good because, you're not the smartest person in the room.
Yes.
There are people in this world who think they are the smartest person, but getting the collective knowledge of people is important because you can test what you're thinking. And you may modify what you're thinking or you may not.
Yes.
But getting information from other people, if I've got a thought, I've got an idea, I'm about to make a decision and I say, what do you think about this? And you just test that. A good leader does that.
Yes.
Yeah, so that's how
Decision making.
Always gone about it.
Okay. Would you like to suggest any books we should read?
Oh, gee, you should have given me some notice about that because I've read some. I've read some very good books, and look, nothing really comes to mind. I mean, there's a book called Grit.
Great.
Yeah, and that's about grit, having resilience look, there's lots of them, and I can give you some names of them, but they just don't come off the top of my head.
Okay, I'll write it later. In 2013, Sir Jan, he was joining Bionics Institute, which is mainly for brain disease, hearing and vision disease, and autoimmune and chronic disease. This is a biology field you went in. What made you went in that direction?
Yeah, look, somebody who I had worked with at Telstra and who had moved to Macquarie Bank was the chairman of the Bionics Institute and asked me would I like to go onto the board. And I said, well, I don't know anything about it. So he told me all about it, and I learned as much as I could about it. And it interested me because it had fantastic patient outcomes. And the whole concept of the Bionics Institute is through electrical stimulation of the nerves or the brain. These chronic diseases can be impacted.
Yes.
And when you think about it, changing the quality of somebody's life who are impacted by that sort of chronic disease like epilepsy and Alzheimer's and Parkinson's is significant. So for me, it's about delivering quality of life to people who would otherwise not have that. And the discovery, so taking what started as the bionic ear, which is the stimulation of the cochlear nerve, into epilepsy and into Parkinson's. I mean, it's fabulous. It's really, really rewarding. I mean, it's the clinicians and the engineers that do it all, but being chairman of that organisation is very satisfying.
Yes, it is. How did Australia Post happen?
So I retired from Telstra in 2011.
Yes.
And not long after, the Minister for Communications, who was then Stephen Conroy, said, "John, can you come and see me? I want to have a chat." And I was like, "Well, what about?" He said, "No, you just come and see me and we'll have a chat." And he said, "I'd like you to be Australia Post," which was a chairman, which was a complete surprise.
Yes.
And he said, "Look, we think you could, you've got the capacity to do that, and we'd like you to do it." So that's how it happened. And well, it was a very enjoyable 7 years.
Okay. And what changes did you make there?
Well, what was happening, and still is that of course people are sending fewer letters and more parcels. And so Australia Post had to transform from a letters business to a parcels business, which meant building big distribution centres. And so in that time I was there, we probably spent $2 billion on building up the parcel business.
Okay.
Because it had to transition away from letters.
Yes.
And it still is transitioning away from letters. Fewer and fewer letters are being sent. But they're still required to maintain delivery of letters.
Yes.
So, you know, the business model is changing all the time.
Yes.
It was pretty exciting time.
Yes. So you, a few months back, you went to India with the Australian Prime Minister, Mr. Albanese. It was an educational trip for you. And can you please tell us what was that about?
Well, I went in my role as Chancellor of Deakin University, and the Prime Minister was on a sort of trade visit, and we asked him to help with the announcement of Deakin University being allowed to open the first Indian campus. Up until now, no university in the world has been able to open a campus. Yeah. And so the Prime Minister came and announced that with us, and that was fantastic. Yeah. And Deakin University has actually been present in India for 28 years. Okay. And we've been attracting Indian students to Deakin for that length of time. Yes. And we've got a small research, not a campus, but a research component in India as well. So it was a very exciting time because next year we'll be offering a Masters of Business Analytics and a Masters of Cyber Security. Yes.
And how was it for you? You had done graduation BCom from Deakin as well. And what was that like experience for you?
Oh, it was a great experience.
Yes.
I did 3 years part-time and then I finished it off full-time. Okay. So I was lucky enough to get a scholarship from Telstra to finish it off full-time.
Yes.
Which shortened it a little bit, so all that was great.
Yes.
And but the experience was fantastic, and there is no question that it helped me in my career, helped me go down a finance and economics path, which I've enjoyed and still do.
Okay, that's great. And so I would like to ask you about the Jazz Festival. You are chairman of Melbourne International Jazz Festival. Can you please tell us something about that?
Yeah, well...
And what's your favorite instrument?
My favourite...
Drum?
Well, look, I like a lot of instruments. Right?
I like saxophone, that's my
well, I was going to say, I like saxophone too. Yes. So, look, I like bass as well. Look, I like jazz, but I was asked by a pianist, Andrew Hager, who was also a partner at PricewaterhouseCoopers, would I like to go onto the board, which I did, and wasn't long before I became chairman. But the Jazz Festival, so you know how I said to you, you need to have interests other than being totally focused on business. Jazz Festival helps me with that, and it's just a lot of fun.
Yes.
And I like all kinds of music.
Yes.
And I was a rock and roll drummer, not a jazz drummer.
Okay.
So that's an indication I like all kinds of music. But look, of course I like the drum. I like watching good drummers, but I like saxophone.
Yes.
Good pianist.
Yes.
I like good pianists.
So what's your favorite drum band and song all time?
Well, I've always been known to, my favourite song's been Smoke on the Water by Deep Purple.
Okay.
You know, so that's back to my rock and roll days, and the drummer there is pretty good, so I like that drummer. Oh, look, there's so many good drummers around, so many drummers that are far better than me.
What would you like to tell people who don't know anything about drumming? What drumming is and what skills it takes?
Well, you've got to be pretty well coordinated, or some might argue not coordinated, because your hands have got to do, and feet have got to all do,
and leg as well,
all different things. But you got to be synchronised, I guess.
Yes.
When you play the drums. I found, and I started learning drums at about 14, just a friend who played drums, but the best thing to do was to get into a band, because you try to learn drums by yourself.
Yes.
The best thing to do is get into a band or a group, play songs, learn together.
Yes.
That was the fastest way.
Okay.
That's how I learned.
Okay. Back to India, sir. What is it like going with Prime Minister when you have a proper squad and it's completely?
Well, it wasn't quite like that. So you keep saying I went with the Prime Minister. The Prime Minister came with us. No, that's not quite true. So what happened was he was already doing something, and he came to our event.
Okay.
Right. So, and it was fabulous that he did that and came to our launch of the campus announcement.
Yes.
So it was sort of, he was doing a trip anyway, and then he came to our event. So I wasn't travelling with the Prime Minister.
Yes.
He was travelling in his jet, and I was travelling Qantas.
Oh. Qantas International.
That's right.
Yes. And so in 2016, you became member of Order of Australia. It's a big achievement. What was it like when they told you about that?
Well, it was fantastic. Really, it was a real honour, because it was recognition for a lot of hard work. I mean, it was for my contribution to finance and communications. So in the finance sphere, I did a lot of voluntary things. I was on the Financial Reporting Council in Australia and things like that to advance reporting, finance reporting, all those sort of things. And in communications, of course, I was at Telstra for 45 years. So it was recognition for a large contribution over time. I was involved at the start of the mobile business in Australia, and just before I left, establishing the National Broadband Network. So it was recognition for those contributions to the country in finance and communications. So it was You don't think about these things when you're doing it, but
Yes.
when somebody says we're going to recognise you for it, it's a pretty good feeling.
It is good feeling, yes. Last 2 questions, sir. Do you have any regrets? And if yes or if no, if somebody, how do we look at that and how do we get over that?
You know, there's always things in life that you probably might make some changes to, but I don't have any regrets. I mean, most of the things, as I said earlier, that you might say is a misstep or a failure, I've learned from.
Yes.
And I've always taken that attitude anyway, so I don't have regrets. I
Okay.
really don't have regrets.
And if my generation, this age group, because we are thinking, oh, I'm regret about this and that, what should we do or what should we think just to get over that feeling?
You know, you can't change
Yes.
the past.
It's the yeah.
Well, you know, my advice is don't hang on to the things that you are calling regrets, because you can't change them.
Yes.
You know, you've got to keep looking forward.
Yes.
And if you want to look back, just learn from it.
Mm.
But keep looking forward,
Yes.
right? What can I do better now,
Yes.
right? Because you can't change it.
Yes.
And there's no good thinking back and saying, oh, look what that's done to me. Look, you know, just move on.
Yes.
Seriously,
Yes.
just move on.
Okay. Last question, sir. You're also chairman of Port of Melbourne. So have you been on a cargo train?
Have I been on what?
Cargo train.
Cargo train?
Yes.
No, I haven't. But I've been out on the pilot boat to take the pilot off the ships, and
Okay.
I've been out on the port many times.
Yes.
And but no, I haven't been on a cargo train. No.
And when you was in Tasmania, when you was a kid, in Adelaide, was there any train crossing nearby?
There was a train track not far away.
Okay.
And it was the Melbourne Adelaide train line, actually.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you should travel in that?
I had been on it, but not when I was a kid.
Okay.
I had been on
Okay.
the overland.
Yeah. Is it really close to you to traveling on train?
I like trains.
Like trains, more than planes, more than Qantas.
No, I enjoy trains because you get to see
Yes.
the country more.
Yes.
Planes I've just had to get used to
Yes.
because I've
Yes.
travelled so much
Yes.
for work in
Yes.
particular.
Yes. Thank you very much, sir. I know you got a really busy schedule, still you gave me time, and it was really nice knowing things about you. And even if the more people get motivated, they're gonna learn something. And this was what my intention was. And I really thank you for giving me time, and really appreciate that.
Oh, you're welcome. It's good to talk to you, and you probably heard the clock chiming in the background.
Yes.
And
Yes.
not sure we can
Yes.
do much about that.
Yes. No, it's okay, sir. Thank you very much, sir.
All right.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.